Welcome everyone, and it's my privilege and opportunity to be here. I'm going to be sharing a few things in regards to the functionality of Civil 3D and what it looks like when it's connected to Autodesk Docs. And then I'll work through some of the Autodesk Construction Cloud, including Docs and some of the other features that are within that, and how to set those up and how you can get those operating and running for your projects, and to really set those up so that you can master your preferences when you can set up the permissions and a number of other aspects of that. So to start with, I'm actually going to show Civil 3D here on my other screen. So I'm going to turn off my my camera just so we can focus in on the presentation here. So I've got Civil 3D open here. On the start screen, when you are connected to Autodesk Docs with Civil 3D, all this is going to work through the desktop connector. This is something they're constantly improving and upgrading, making it faster to upload and to access files through. But when you're connected through the desktop connector, when you get to the start screen, you'll see all the previous files that you might have been into. But when you're connected through the desktop connector, you can go through Autodesk, the projects, and you'll be able to see all the different Docs projects that you're connected to. In the process of looking at this, I'll show you what a couple of things look like. So when it comes to this particular project, I've got a couple of different files open on it right now. And so I want to show you what that looks like when somebody else might be in some of these files. So in the start screen, I'm going to navigate to this Ridgegate Parkway project. I'm going to open up this project folder, and then I've set this up exactly how I wanted to, and I'll show you how we can do this within the Docs web viewer. And under the design folder, I'm going to go under Civil, and this is where most of my roadway projects and most of my roadway files are found. My Ridgegate corridor, you'll see that there's this little yellow icon next to it that says locked by. Now, I'm the one who's in that file right now, and it's going to tell me it's locked by me. But if someone else were in that file and I didn't get access to that, it would say who had locked that file. So this is something that you can keep track of. Files are going to be locked out once somebody gets access to that file and they're inside of it. That way, in a shared environment, if you need to get access to some of those are things you can communicate with. And that's essentially what it'll look like. When you are connected, so I'm going to go into this Ridgegate corridor file, and my data shortcuts work very much the same way. So in this case, I've got a surface, I've got some other alignment information that's referenced into my Civil 3D drawing. And when I look at that information, all of those, my shortcuts, if I set my working folder here, I can see that that working folder is actually found under Autodesk Docs. And so in this case, I'm actually connected through, if I had backed out, you can see that it's Autodesk Docs, this infrastructure technical marketing, that's the folder that I'm working in. And this is the name of the project, this Ridgegate Parkway. And so those data shortcuts work the same way they would work on a LAN environment, or if I'm on a local environment, they'll work the same way when I'm working with Docs. One key giveaway or one key element to look for to make sure that you are connected is at the top of the screen, you'll notice this icon right here, this cloud icon will show up anytime that you are connected. So if that's not showing up, if you're only seeing that and it kind of looks like a piece of paper, that just means that you may not be connected to the desktop connector, or you're not connected to a Docs project. So that's something to keep an eye on. That's kind of the first element to see. Functionally, everything will work the same way that it would if you were working in your standard Civil 3D environment. Now, I want to show you what it looks like when I'm changing files. So in this case, if I need to change which project I'm working within, Autodesk Docs gives you a lot of different opportunities to set up a project however you need to. You can set it up in different ways, but you also have the ability to navigate to some of those. So under this infrastructure technical marketing folder, I have a number of projects that I've got access to. Right now, most of this stuff is showing up in this Ridgegate project, but if I were to go to a different one, let's say I go to this Capistrano Beach project, I've got this folder set up in a different way. I've got it under 06 design and under civil, and then I have some of my files that I might access through that way. So again, getting access to these files and functioning with them, it's going to work fairly similar, but this is going to give you an opportunity to get connected to those. All right, next I want to show you some of the functionality, and I'm going to bring up the screen for to show you what Docs looks like. So this is that same project. And again, this is a sample project that I'll use most of the time in this demonstration, just to kind of show you what it looks like. But this is just the file that we gave the name to. It's we had the date in front of it and Ridgegate Parkway. And with all of these folders, I've got full access to customize these however I need to. So if we've got a client that has a specific folder set up that they need to have it followed, if we're working with a DOT or if it's a municipality or somebody else, we can set that up exactly according to the structure that they need to have set up. And it's simple to add something to that. If I need to add a subfolder, in this case, I've got all the way down to 10. I could call this 11 and I could call this test. And if once I've selected that, then that folder is going to appear. Now there's nothing in that because I've just created that, but we can set that up and customize that however we want. We also have the ability, once we get this set up, to save this as a template. So if we're working a lot with that client, they have a specific folder set up, that's exactly what we can do there. Now, if I don't want this, I can just right click on this. I can delete that folder, it'll be gone. Keep in mind with Docs, one thing that's nice about that is nothing's ever really gone. If we've deleted a folder that we didn't mean to, if I happen to select O2 Design and deleted it accidentally, I'm not going to do that in this case, but if something like that had happened, we can go over to this deleted items folder and search for all the different elements that have been removed. And that's just in case we get in trouble and find ourselves, where we're missing files. So there's opportunities to recover those files even once we think that they may have been removed. So we've got the ability to set those up. When it comes to members, so if I select members here, we'll see this whole list of all the different members that are part of this project. And we can also see what sort of permissions and what sort of access they've got. So they've got access to Docs to begin with. And that's going to come, if we're using the AC collection, if we've got Civil 3D, Docs comes standard. With the Construction Cloud, there's a couple of other elements that we could add to that, such as design collaboration, model coordination, takeoff. And I'll just show kind of a highlight of what some of those look like and how those function. But when it comes to adding members, and we've got quite a few here, we can take a look at their different permission levels. So if I go to Jeff Bartles here, some of you may be familiar with him. He's part of this project as well. He's set up as a project administrator. If I need to change his permission settings, I might come in and change him to just a project member. And then if he's, if we need to restrict access to some of these, if he doesn't need access to build or to model coordination or one of these, I could toggle that on or off, and he might get a notification or something like that. So he might get a couple of these randomly. But what it'll do is that will change their permission settings. So again, if I go back under this Docs folder, I can right click within the project, or if I want to specify which folder I need people to have access to, I could right click there and go under the permission settings. So under this design folder, which is where I have the majority of my Civil 3D design files, I can see who has what access permissions and what access levels. So in some cases, let me go to someone here who's got edit. So pick a good one. So Eric here, he's got edit capabilities, but if I need to restrict his access, maybe he's a contractor, maybe we don't want him getting into our files and editing them. We only want him to be able to view those. I could come in and I could change his settings. I'd have to change his permission because I think he's set up as an administrator. So I might change what his setting is. So change him to a project member and then change his level to say edit or create or view. Let me go back over to this members. When they are given a specific role, so there's all kinds of different roles that we can give them. BIM managers, architects, engineers, estimators. These have built-in permissions associated with them. So as a BIM manager, Jeff has got full access to a number of these different access files. But when I want to get into and restrict some of these permissions, I might need to change their administrative level. So in that case, I could change it from project member or from a project administrator to a project member, and then change some of those permissions. So with Docs, we really get the opportunity to restrict and control who has what access to which files. And so this is often what we would do in a low trust environment. If we're in an aspect where the we're working with subs, we're working with contractors, people who we want to sort of restrict some of the different folder access, we'll set that up in this regard. Okay, so when it comes to sharing a project data, so let me get into the civil file here, and I want to share one of these files to have somebody review this. So let's say I get into this corridor solids file. I can select that file, and with this, we've got a couple different things. There is the Autodesk web application. Now with Civil 3D elements, it's not going to we're not going to be able to view those quite as well. We'll be able to see that more from a viewing aspect, but we could launch Autodesk for web from this point if we wanted to, or we can actually share this with others. So I'm going to actually pick share, and in this case, I am going to pick one of my colleagues. I'm going to go and find, or I could search for him, but I'm going to pick. Let's pick John Sayre right here. He's one of my colleagues, and I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to say, please review this file. I might give him more specific instructions or something along those lines. But when I hit send, John is now going to get a notification, and it's going to have this file linked to it. And so he can get access to that. What he's able to do is what'll happen is when he selects that link from that email that he gets, he would be able to click on that file and open it up in the viewer. And I want to show you a couple things on how this works. It defaults to a 2D view. So however that file looks in 2D. And in fact, let me pick a different file. I'm going to back up. I just had this thought. So we've seen what this looks like here. Let me show you this file again that we're looking at. We see what this corridor file looks like in Civil 3D view. We've got the contours and the corridor model itself. But if I go back into that and I actually go and view this, I can actually view this while somebody else has got it locked up. That's not going to restrict that. So if I select that file, it'll default to this 2D view. And I want to show you a couple things that you can do with this. So in 2D, it's going to show all the elements of this file. It is basically going to show the model space view. So I've got some profiles on the side, I've got some assemblies, and I've got all that information on the side of it, but then I've got the ability to get in and start to view and look at some of the details of my corridor model. And if I needed to, I could make some adjustments, or I could make some call out an issue. If I see a problem right here, I could say, okay, we've got a problem with a clash or something like that, and point that out. And I'm making this up at this point, but I could say, we've got a problem with a utility pole and a drainage line, or whatever it might be, and then I could give it a description. I've got a clash or some kind of cleanup that needs to happen. Okay, and once I pick that, it'll assign it an issue number, and then I can actually provide some of this and I can assign this to somebody as well. So in this case, I'm going to assign this to another colleague of mine. It's actually Andrew Manzi. So I'm going to assign that to him, and I'm going to give him a deadline of next week to finish that. And once I've published, I can either unpublish that or it defaults to publish. He'll get a notification, and if I want to include any sort of attachments to that, he'll get a notification, and it'll show him this information right there that's going to give him some instruction on what to do with this file. So I don't have to be in the Civil 3D file to review this and get access to it, but I can provide that information to him if need be. So again, this defaults to that 2D view. If I want to switch view and I want to see what this looks like in 3D, I can come to the sheets and views. And when I click on that, any sheets that I have set up with that, if I had cut sheets all along my corridor, all those sheets, all those paper space views would show up in this list. But I can also look at the 3D view, and if I just double click on that, and sometimes it kind of gives me a slightly skewed angle, but if I kind of adjust it just a bit, it'll show me exactly what I've got. So if I rotate this into more of an isometric view, and I zoom in, I can look at some of those 3D model details of my corridor. I can see the cut and fill volumes. I can see some of the 3D elements that have been included in here for this model, and I can kind of take a look and turn off things as well. Like if I see that I've got a surface turned on, or I've got some of these elements that I don't necessarily want to show, I can select that and I can say hide the selected item. Give it just a second because I may have picked a fairly large model there. So now I'm hiding the finished grade surface is what it looks like. And so I probably picked a bad one because it's taken a little bit of time. But what I can do is I can turn off some of these different elements, and I can get in and I can evaluate that, and this is going to wait because it is a larger thing. So this is probably a bad example to pick right there. So let me jump over to this right here. So what it did is it I picked a large surface to turn off, and that was probably not a great idea for a live demo in this regard. But we can see that getting inside of that file, there's a lot of different things we can do with it. We can review that, we can compare that, and we can start to reference in XREF files and see the data shortcuts and see the information in there to evaluate exactly what's going on. So the model viewer really is a good opportunity to when it comes to creating and making some of these edits. I want to show you another one of the files here as well. Let's get into this model, this 3D model, and I'll show you some of the issues that have already been created and identified in this regard. We can kind of view how some of those are going. So we've got a couple of some items that are pending and verifying rail connection details. We've got a bridge model in this case where we've got some of these call out details that are identified as revising the bridge details. Again, if we want to see that in 3D, go back to this, pick that. And we can see those same elements that have been identified here and just see what they look like when we rotate and view that 3D model. So again, if I pick on that, it's going to show me exactly, it says I'm not seeing a standard drawing for the connection point. And this is something that, there might be an attachment associated with it, or there should be an attachment with that as far as how this barrier is going to connect to the jersey or the concrete barrier versus this guardrail face. So that's a good question there. We've got to figure out how to finalize that, but we can also see not only things that are in review, we can also see some of the elements that are in this case that have been closed out and finalized. So again, a really good opportunity to sort of review all the different details and elements of our Civil 3D drawing without actually getting into the Civil 3D files. We can communicate a lot of this information, and we can see where we've got markups or issues that have been created and published in this regard. A couple other things I want to show just briefly, and then Juliana, if you want to let me know if there are any questions that we've run across in that time, but just briefly, I do want to cover just one or two more elements of this, and then if there are some specific details or specific questions that people want to get into, I'm more than happy to cover those as well. So
we don't have questions until now, okay. So you can go ahead.
No problem. So right now, I'm going to get over into design collaboration, and I want to show you what this is intended to look like. So when I move over to this module, this is really intended to be broken up into the different design disciplines. So if I pick these three buttons, you'll see this drop down, and then we'll get into, and if I pick the down button again, we get into what we call these swim lanes. Okay, and these are all the different disciplines that are associated with this project. So we've got our GIS information, we've got our drainage team, our rail team, the site team. We've got a lot of different elements that are going on with this. Right now, I'm currently on the civil side, and I can see all the different models that are available to me. And I could do the same thing. If I pick on these models, I'll get a preview of these. I can move this up just a little bit so I can preview these same drawings. But you'll see I've got the access to the same information that I had when I was in Docs, as far as opening up some of these models and reviewing some of these details. And I can see this comment that was just created. And this was one that I just created, sent it to Andy. If I want to change the status of this to pending, you'll see that updates when I do that. So we can get to all these different files that are available to us. But what we're able to do, and really what this is intended for, would be to share some of this information. So if there were some of these files that I wanted to create, I wanted to share this corridor now, this file that I just had, and I can go and I can create a package. When it comes into this package right here, I'm going to find that model under my civil, and it was my ridge gate corridor. So I'm going to select that here. Excuse me. We'll give that a excuse me. So once I select that, wait for the preview here, or maybe it won't, because it is a fairly large file. When I click save, what it will do, generally it'll, again, I'm doing a live demo, so of course it's going to work the way that is. But what I have the ability to do is create and save that and to share that as a package. So if I pick let me pick a smaller file. There aren't very many small files in here, unfortunately. Let's go to the light poles. Let me cancel out of that. Close that. Okay. All right. So these are the models that are available to me. This apartment C is the one that's showing up right here. So this is an apartment it's a drawing that was done from a Revit file, converted into a Civil 3D file, and it's made available. If I want to make that available to some other team or someone else has made it available to me, I can click save, and it will create a package that I can share. Oh, and it's locked. Okay, that's the problem. Sorry, guys. So because I'm in this file right now, it's locked. That's why I'm not able to share it. So let me pick a different file. My apologies for that. So let me pick LT poles. This is a smaller file. Pick that as a package that I can share. And so because I'm not in that file, so something to keep in mind, if you're in the file and you're trying to share it, you need to have it, you need to be out of the file and make sure that it's unlocked. So that way the latest details can be shared. And then we can share that. We can call whatever we want to. So in this case, we've got our light poles that we're going to share. We'll just say the same thing here for the utilities. And then once I click share, that will create a new package of information, and we can see that right here, okay? And so if I go back to the duration of the project, you can see all the different packages that have been shared by the civil team to the other disciplines. And so now if I get into this, I can look at and see there was a couple of ones that misfired. I tried to save a couple of those files. They were locked. Don't do that. That's not what we want to do. But if in this case, I can see what files were shared. And so in this case, that the Ridgegate LT poles file was the one that was shared. So if the utilities or the survey team, let's go to the surveys, okay? When I select that, because I have admin access, I can actually pick a different team. But if I were part of this survey team, I can go through and expand this, and I can see some of the packages that have been recently shared. So in this case, I can see from the civil side that they have a number of different packages of information or milestone submittals that I might need to consume. So if I go in here and I select consume, I can pick that. And what'll happen is that information will now be available to me in a different folder. And I'll show you what that folder looks like. So let me go back to docs, and I'll show you these different disciplines and what those look like. So under the design folder, we've got the civil discipline. So any of the packages of information, any of those design submittals that were shared with the civil team, they all go under, and by default, they'll go under this consumed folder. And so if I open this up, I can see all the different teams that have shared information, the survey team, the rail team, the GIS team. So if I go under that survey or rail, I can see the packages of information that have been downloaded and shared with the civil team. And it works the same way. So if I go over to, let's go over to the survey team right here. I'll pick on that folder. And under the consumed folder, we can see the civil files that have been shared as well. And there that file is that I just consumed. And we can see the date of when that information was shared. I went through, I consumed that file, and now it's available to me as a reference in my consumed folders. So that's how those design collaborations, they're intended to be discipline focused and really help to sort of sort and keep track of design milestone and design XREF information inside this project folder. Last thing I'll show is the model coordination portion, what we can do here, and this is really kind of cool, we can aggregate everything together. So in this case, I can see all the different models, all the different files that are available to me to create a view from. And in this case, keep an eye on this upper right corner here on the civil side. So I'm under the civil discipline, but if I were to take a look at the rail discipline, for instance, we haven't gotten into many of the rail files yet, but there is a whole rail aspect to this particular project. There are a number of different files and site drawings that are all associated with this project. And so if I wanted to create a model, I could toggle some of these different files or some of these models and select those for viewing. Now, if I go under, let me change this here. Model coordination, I'm going to change this out. And I may have a couple too many of these tabs open. So let me get back to this onto the rail side. And if I go under my views, I've actually already created and set some of these up. Some of these predetermined views where I have a number of these files that are selected. And again, there were 91 different models that I had to choose from. So if I pick this one right here, the high-speed rail 3D model, and I open this up, there's going to be quite a few of these different reference files that are going to open up with this. And in this case, I've got 13 different files that I'm viewing all at once. The benefit of this is that I can look at this and I can see and sort this information if I need to, and I can get a list of how all these look. But what I'm able to do is, let me pan around on here. We can kind of see what files have been made available. So we can see the corridor model itself of the rail, but also as this populates, and it sometimes takes a little while, again, depending on the might take a little while to kind of catch up. We can see the rail station. If we wanted to add some of that apartment building or some of these other structures that are available on this site, we can get in and start to look at those and evaluate those. And really what the purpose of this is to be able to run clash detection between the different disciplines. So if we get in here and we see that we've got, some of these, for instance, right here, this is a pretty bad clash. We've got a drainage model, and I'll get underneath this here, conflicting with our bridge abutments, that are going into the ground. Well, that's going to be an issue. We've got to figure that out. So if I close this, we can get into and take a look at the clashes. And again, it's going to compare all the different models that are available to the rail discipline. Again, where it's set under rail, but we can get into and start to analyze and view those different files with each other. And so if I know, if I get into and want to look at the bridge model compared to the drainage model, I can get into that and take a look at that file and see the different clashes that it's going to identify. In this case, I've got quite a few more there, but this will show me the number of conflicts that are going to exist within each one of these. And then in that aspect, I can identify those conflicts and get those sorted out before the contractors in the field trying to build these things. So with that, that's most of the stuff that I had intended to share and present in that regard. Are there any questions or any specific details that anybody would like to focus in on, or any specific questions about Civil 3D in regards to ACC or the Construction Cloud or Docs?